And we will go ahead and get started.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you all for being here. Just as a to catch up some of the new folks. I mean, what we're really focused here on is emission reduction strategies and trying to develop those in concert with environmental justice groups and more importantly, the community that surrounds the port. And so I just wanted to give a few updates. I know we've been talking about doing some improvements on the website, which we are working on, much to, I think, Mary Elizabeth's dismay as we keep moving things around on her. So we're trying to kind of balance how that works. But we have provided some additional stormwater data on our environmental webpage. And we're kind of looking at revamping the entire thing to try to be as clear and transparent as possible. One of the other things that's been pointed out recently is the community would like to provide some input on kind of agenda setting. And so we are completely open to getting your feedback on what you want to hear. We've reached out a few times. We haven't gotten a lot of response, but we will continue to push that out. And I think, Jonathan, you were the last to raise it. I think we responded, but we really haven't heard anything back. But we are definitely willing to look, and we want this to be as rewarding for everybody. So we want to make sure that we're covering topics that that folks want to hear about. We have been busy. We've done additional tours. We had Davis Harper, we had Ed Ward and his group, as well as Taylor came out. We had Nicole and folks from CARB. We have had Matt's been busy putting folks in touch with us, like the group from UC Berkeley, which was a great group of students, and we'll be sharing additional information with them. They seem to know a lot about the port and have been kind of studying the AB 617 process. So we were really excited to have them come out and look forward to working with them further. Did anybody want to say anything about the tours that they were on? If Nicole or Ed, I don't know if Taylor or Davis are on.
This is Ed. I found the tour to be eye-opening. I had a set image of how much business is actually going on in the port, and I think you probably quadrupled that with the tour. I'm very impressed with the commitment to electric forklifts. You have some of the largest electric forklifts I've ever seen, and I think what's going on is really a pretty incredible given the scope of it all.
Yeah, and we are definitely getting the spotlight from everything that's going on with the supply chain crisis. And so we really are focused and working with the state legislature and others to identify opportunities to move more of the agricultural goods that are kind of rotting in containers at this point. So so appreciate you guys coming out, Ed. And I think we've got Nate, Debbie, and a few others that we're targeting to have additional tours with in the near future. Mariah, I'm sorry, do you have a question?
Hi, I don't have a question, but I do just have a comment about we really appreciate the water quality postings that the port has been doing on their website. So I just wanted to kind of give you all some kudos for that, since you were talking about the website stuff. And also for getting the notice out for these meetings a day earlier than they normally were. I know that you're kind of starting to get the swing into things. So just want to give credit where credit is due. And especially with the water quality stuff, it's helping us out a lot with our harmful algal blooms testing and that program that we're doing. So yeah, I know that website updates can be stressful at times, but that has been incredibly helpful for us and getting the information to the community. So thank you so much.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it. And we also have we'll have a HABS update later on as well from the port side. But glad that we can have that information available for you guys. I wanted to ask, there was a California Association of Port Authorities tariff call recently. Jason Catindoy is going to provide an update on kind of some challenges with the at-birth regulation. So Jason, would you mind giving an update on those meetings?
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So for the group, just a little background. So through the California Association of Port Authorities, there is a monthly, I'll call it a coordination meeting amongst the 11 California public ports that happens, and for different sectors of the business. This week it was for tariffs and practices. So essentially the operating side of each port of the ports get together, and we talk about best practices, and kind of one thing that came up that seems to be topic of discussion more and more lately is at-birth regulations, capture and control systems that are available. And with CARB's visit that we did last week, and kind of the focus on just, again, constraints at the Port of Stockton related to our physical layout, the channel, how just some of the technologies that are out there will be very difficult for us to deploy given our unique landscape. So more and more, just a lot of discussion related to what technologies are out there that are applicable to us, to the Port of Stockton, as 2027 rolls around, and the CARB at-birth regulation captures our tanker vessels. So we are in touch with a company out of Austria who's looking to develop a shore-based capture and control system, fixed. So something that lives in the backlands of our terminal and doesn't impede our operational area against the vessel and cargo operations. Something that is not developed in the U.S. yet. So we are in discussions with them and working through scoping that, looking at timeline of implementation, costs. So as we move through that, Jeff, I imagine that we'll keep the group updated.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a big focus of the CARB visit recently and tour, was trying to understand and figure out kind of what that's going to look like, is each port's different, and we're all trying to figure out how we're going to comply with that regulation. So thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. We'll move on to our ongoing projects. I think the only one we really have out there right now is at least out for public review. What we've already got comments on is TC NorCal, or Trammell Crow. Jason Cashman, you want to give a brief update on what's happening with that project?
Sure. I don't think we have much of an update from last month's meeting. We're still on hold on that project. And so we haven't really addressed any of the comments, and we're not going to start addressing those comments until we get further along on that in the project and on the lease side. And so, hopefully in the next month or so, we can have some more updates for you folks on that. But we are still in the process of reviewing the comments. They were substantial comments, and so we are reviewing. They were very good comments that we received from the public and the public agencies. And so we're looking forward to providing a response to that shortly.
All right. And then I think I mentioned on the AB 617 meeting, I didn't mention it here. I don't think we'd had another meeting, but the port director and Jolene and I went over and met with the principal at Washington Elementary. I'm sorry, Mary Elizabeth, do you have a question? And has Sylvia Cantu, has she joined as well? Okay. Mary Elizabeth, you have a question?
I just was wondering, on that, who is paying for that DEIR? Is that something that the port pays for, or the potential applicant?
The potential applicant pays for the EIR.
Okay, and they always pick the same company, Seacrest?
No, that was Anchor QEA.
Anchor, sorry. I saw the Anchor, yeah.
They don't always pick them. So we have a good relationship with Anchor, and Anchor knows us very well. And so we're comfortable with them doing, and so we suggest a few consultants that we feel we can trust their CEQA documents. and minimize kind of effort on the staff side. And so the tenant has the option to use whoever they want. We just provide Anchor as a potential option, and one we have a good working relationship with, as well as they're very competent on what they do. And so if they want to use someone else, they can go out and they can bring them to us. They just have to tell us. We have to look at their qualifications and their history and then see and go from there. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, thank you. I just had been wondering about that for quite a while.
Got it. Yeah. And Willie, you have a question? Oh, it's in the chat. All right.
No, I don't have a question. I just would love to be a part of that agenda setting.
Oh, gotcha. You bet. Okay. So as I mentioned, we had a meeting with the principal over at Washington School. It was really positive, but the one thing that really did pop out during the meeting was we could hear trucks even within the classrooms, and then watching some of the students try to cross the street with trucks coming, down Fresno. I think it really hit home for us. I think there was more traffic going through there than we had thought. From that, we kind of kicked off a little harder the traffic study to look at ways we can get port trucks out of that neighborhood. And so we're going to ask Jolene now to give us a little update on the traffic study.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Great. It was very helpful, I think, sitting there at the elementary school with principal and Sylvia, who I think is on this call, as we were sitting in her classroom and just hearing the truck traffic go by. And what we started to realize is how much of that's generated by Penny Newman. So it's not trying to access the port gate. So that's only part of the problem. I think it was one of the eye-opening thoughts of being out there. We did collect some counts, and I just received the data this morning, so I haven't had a chance to start going through it and seeing if it corroborates what we saw out there in the field. But we did look at some other possibilities as interims while we were out there, and I think the most telling thing, other than looking at Penny Newman, we're also examining some of the other lots that are out there that are being used for truck parking or other types of truck generating uses that are within the neighborhood itself, especially along Ventura. So we started thinking maybe Ventura might be a possible access in the future for entering the port. But I think as we start processing this data, and that's our next step, making sure that if we start coming up with some possible solutions, at least interim solutions to accessing the port on the East Complex, that we're capturing as much of the traffic, if not all of it, as possible, and taking it completely off of Fresno and off of Washington, at least between Ventura and where it connects to Washington. So Washington to Harbor Street. So our next steps are really processing that data. We also took train counts so we could understand where the train traffic is and what other types of traffic we might have to negotiate if we start rerouting trucks in that area. But we know there's a need to do something. We also started thinking about some traffic calming measures that might help. We didn't expect to see some of the trucks that were we saw some cut down Sonora, for example. And those are being generated again by some of those uses on Ventura that probably aren't the best use in the residential area. So we have some future coordination to do with the county and the city on the land use side. And in the meantime, we'll start processing the data and looking to see where we might be able to make some shifts in the truck routes through the neighborhood.
Great. Okay, we've got a few comments in the chat. Matt, you got your hand raised. You want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to ask Jolene, those Wildcat parking lots, does the county have to like permit them? Or do they just like buy a lot and park on it?
Somebody's got a permit if they're building. Well, it's interesting in Boggs Track because it's city, county. It's kind of hard to tell where you are. But if they're building something that's, you know, an
Yeah, they-
office or something, they have to have permits from the city.
Couple of them have elevated loading docks, right? And definitely those guys had to pull permits, but a couple of them are just unimproved dirt lots with a ton of trucks on them.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't.
Right.
be surprised
Yeah,
if-
like a good example of that is it's the southeast corner of Hazelton and Ventura. It's just a dirt lot behind several homes where there's several tractors parked that we noticed. So the other thing that we're doing is we're making sure that we get the mapping correct, so we know which jurisdiction these facilities are located within. And we'll look into a little bit more of the history of how they popped up there. Are they legal? Are they conforming, non-conforming, and what the city or county might be able to do.
Yeah, we're looking at the same lot.
Yeah, that was one that I noticed was a problem. The one across from it's improved with an office on it. There was also a facility that was interesting on Ventura, just north of Washington on the west side of the street, where again, it's a dirt lot, but it also looked like they had storage for gravel and there was some type of aggregate activity happening there. So that's been along Ventura, I think is one of the areas of concern because whether or not those are permitted properly and making sure that those facilities, if they are there legally, have access without necessarily having to cut through the neighborhood to get there.
Thank you.
Yeah, Matt, we've seen some of these popping up and I tell you, yeah, we're not sure how they're not affiliated, at least from what we can tell with any of our port tenants. They've just kind of been popping up and surprising us quite a bit. Jonathan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a quick question. So, I know Penny Newman is probably the majority of it because realistically, if we have the port handle where the trucks are going, we still got Penny Newman. So have there been discussions with Penny Newman on their thoughts in regards to this traffic study or redirecting their trucks?
We have not engaged them yet specifically on this. I think we will. I don't know exactly when we're going to do that yet, but I think from the work that Jolene's doing, we're trying to figure out, how much is their problem versus how much is our problem. But obviously we realize it may end up, we want to look at what the potential solutions are before we approach them, because those potential solutions may or may not come with a hefty price tag. So we want to kind of have our head wrapped around that before we approach them. But I think we will be in a position to within this calendar year.
Good to hear. I know Ed put in the chat that Penny Newman, which I didn't know Penny Newman was in Fresno. They're part of the CSC. So in terms of any sort of contact going forward, that's a good idea. If they're part of AB 617, then they clearly know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like they're part of the Fresno.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just about to say they're on the Fresno CSC, but I think maybe to your point, and maybe what Ed was saying was that we do have contacts in the Fresno location and maybe use that.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that they didn't join the the Stockton CSC as well. But did folks reach out to them? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we did kind of similar to what we did in Fresno. We did sort of a big outreach when we first started 617 and kind of the local businesses.
Got it. Okay. But yeah, no, we have contacts, and we can reach out. We have a relationship, I guess, to some degree with them. But so we can reach out. Margot,
One
you have
last-
a question? What's that? Sorry.
Sorry, I was. The other part was when Jolene mentioned about Ventura. Ventura is still next to residents.
It is.
And so realistically, it might need to make it building another road. Now, there are grants to help build that sort of stuff, but yeah, unfortunately, that's the way it was. Urban planning from long ago, it created this sort of way and not thought about public health. So, that road is very tight. it's a tight road. I'm very surprised trucks even take it. And I just don't want it to be a benefit for more and more trucks to utilize it now that it would be like a new road.
And I think this is one of the, one of the ideas that we had as an interim. We don't see it as being a long-term solution for that reason. And on the portion of Ventura that has an opportunity to enter into the port, there are, I believe I counted 4 homes on Ventura that would be impacted by moving all those trucks in front of those homes. It would take all the trucks off Fresno and prevent the impacts to the school, but it was just moving the problem to another location. So it would have to be something that would be agreed upon, and something that the neighborhood could get behind to do as an interim, while, as Jeff said, going after the best solution that we've been able to come up with means another crossing at the back, which means a very costly and probably would take a couple of years to build a major bridge over the back. So just getting the environmental clearance for that takes a couple of years, and then the construction actions that happen after you obtain the funding. So if we're looking anywhere from 5 to 10 years for a permanent solution, is there something better than Fresno as an interim that wouldn't become permanent? And it would have to be somehow conveyed that that would not be a permanent solution. If there are other thoughts or ideas, and we're happy to entertain them. I think that's part of why we participate with all of you on this call. If you have other ideas that we could look at, that'd be great. It's just there aren't very many roadways that provide access to the East Complex industrial facilities.
Well, at least the waterfront side, yes. Sylvia, you've got, let's take one more question from Sylvia, and then we need to move on.
I just want to make a comment. Today, from the crosswalk signal to the light, the highway patrol was out there and they had a tent and they were stopping trucks according to the campus security. And I guess they were looking for paperwork and all that. Did you know anything about that? I mean, what's that? Is that part of the project or something?
No, I think that's part of the Air Resources Board. They were going to do some enforcement out at the port. I know that they were right in front of our admin building yesterday. I'm assuming that's what it was. They just
okay.
moved locations. That's probably, since they were right at the port yesterday, it was probably to try to capture some of the trucks at Penny Newman. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to mention real quick, SB and I think a few others are going to be out at Earth Day on Sunday. And so we're looking forward to seeing some of you guys out there as well.
There are a couple of raised hands, Jeff. It looks like Sylvia and Matt.
Oh, Sylvia just spoke. Matt, your hand's still up? Do you have something else? Okay.
No, I should have been down, but I know why the system was out there in Fresno. It was CARB and the CHP were pulling over drivers and asking them why they're going this way, and then letting them know where they should go. And they also had their peak system out there sniffing for bad trucks. I don't know how it went, but hopefully.
Typically they do kind of a drayage truck inspection multiple times per year.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know how they can tell them not to go down Fresno at this point. I mean, it's a truck route, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's some confusion over routes leaving the port between the city and the county as to which types of trucks can go on which routes, because we've seen a couple of maps that don't jive. But they were talking with your port police yesterday on sort of staging and troubleshooting the device.
Oh, okay. So kind of the meat of everything that we're trying to do here is develop our clean air plan and look for opportunities to reduce emissions throughout the port operation. And so to give an update, we're focusing this month on trucks. Last month, we had a really good discussion. If you weren't here on tugs, I would suggest maybe go back. We had Brusco Tug Company come and talk about what they've done so far. And they're making really good progress. They want to work with us potentially to demonstrate a zero emission tug, which would be outstanding. So we're looking for different opportunities there as well. But wanted to have Starcrest provide an update on kind of where we are and ask Renee to speak to us. Thanks, Renee.
So I did, we can go to the next slide. I prepared a couple of slides just for a little bit of context, but really want to save time for some discussion at the end because I think this is going to be a topic that generates a lot of interest. So first, again, just sort of the overall process that we're using to develop the Clean Air Plan. Next slide. And we are here, we are going through, that's fine, you can stay here. Monthly, for the last couple of months, we've been doing each source category. And so we're going to continue to do that through the summer with the goal of developing the Clean Air Plan in fall. So, okay, port trucks. I'm putting in here a couple of terms that you might hear that relate to port trucks. Heavy duty diesel trucks, class 8 is the term that we use to describe them, which is a measure of their size. And in 2018, this is based on the Port of Stockton emissions inventory, there were 233,000 truck trips associated with the Port of Stockton. Now, the estimates that are that most of those, 75 to 80% of those trips are within 30 miles. 20 to 25% of those trips are much longer, 100 plus miles out to the Bay Area. In terms of the emissions from the 2018 emissions inventory, heavy duty trucks accounted for 7% of the port's nitrogen oxide emissions, 1% of particulate matter emissions, and 21% of the port's greenhouse gas emissions. Now, remember that the Port of Stockton emissions inventory has a narrow geographic scope. It only goes out 8 miles from the port to the nearest highway. So we know these are the emissions associated with the trucks that touch the port. Next slide. But those trucks travel regionally, and regionally heavy duty trucks are a much bigger issue. This is a graph from the San Joaquin Air Pollution Control District, and you can see that heavy duty trucks in that air basin, which is much bigger than Port of Stockton, but they represent the biggest slice of the emissions pie in the air basin. Again, not all of these trucks are associated with the port, but we know that trucks are a big issue for the community and regionally. Next slide. So the good news is that the California Air Resources Board, the state agency that regulates air emissions, is moving forward pretty aggressively with regulations designed to reduce the impacts from heavy duty trucks. So a couple of the regulations that are coming up, first there is the existing drayage truck regulation, and then also there's a truck and bus regulation, which states that by 2023, all trucks must be model year 2010 or newer. So that is, that's on the book, so that's gonna happen. Now in discussion, the Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, this one has also been adopted. This requires manufacturers to begin producing zero emissions trucks in 2024. And they have to meet gradually increasing sales percentages every year. So that's good news for people who want zero emissions trucks, that in 2024 we'll have commercialized options. Here's the one that's interesting. This has been proposed, it has not been adopted, but it's the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation. And this would actually impose requirements on the fleets to start transitioning to zero emissions trucks, possibly beginning as early as 23, with all zero emissions drayage trucks in 2035. Other activity around trucks, the AB 617 emission reduction plan identified numerous strategies to reduce the impacts from trucks in and around Stockton. Zero emissions truck technology is advancing rapidly, should be commercialized by 2024. And there's over $1 billion in state grant funding over the next few years, much of it dedicated to trucks and freight trucks in particular. So there's lots of opportunity to get funding in order to move these trucks into zero emissions. Now, one of the things that sort of complicates this for the port is that the port does not own the trucks. most of the tenants do not have a direct relationship to the truck operators. So that's one of the things that makes it a little bit more difficult to get at these trucks. But we're going to talk about some of the potential strategies for the Port of Stockton clean air plan that we're looking at. Next slide. Sorry. Okay, so in terms of the clean air plan for Port of Stockton, because there's so much activity at the state level and at the regional level, where we really want to be is accelerating these state regulations. And then also working with our city and regional partners to address many of the quality of life issues that are reflected in the AB 617 emission reduction plan. So doing the traffic study, which Jolene is working on to evaluate the ways of routing trucks away from the community. That's a good strategy. Helping truck operators get grants to transition to zero emission trucks. Reducing fugitive dust emissions resulting from trucks, which is often a big issue in the community where there are unpaved roads or unpaved areas and those trucks kick up a lot of dust. Looking at ways that we can reduce those emissions to reduce some of the impacts on the community. And then I think you'll be hearing about this later in the agenda. The Port of Stockton is developing an electric vehicle blueprint specifically focused around zero emissions trucks. So what are the actions needed to support a zero emissions truck transition in terms of the infrastructure that you need, the funding that you'll need, workforce development, the whole package. And then in partnership with the tenants, working with the tenants to help them develop and implement zero emissions truck transition plans at each facility so that they are ready when these zero emission trucks start coming off the manufacturing line to look at ways of getting these trucks to Stockton. For tenants that have leases coming up, lease negotiations present an opportunity for the port to take more of a requirement type of approach to developing these transition plans. But even for the tenants that do not have leases coming up and don't have opportunities, the port can still work in a facilitator role to get them thinking about what it will take to support zero emission trucks and to provide the resources to do so. And then also having the port collaborate with other agencies on a regional anti-idling plan and increasing the enforcement of idling limits at distribution centers, warehouses, or other facilities within the port. And some of these strategies may look very familiar to those of you who are involved in AB 617. We wanted to make sure that we were in alignment with that plan, but really focusing on defining what the port's contribution to those strategies will be and if there are opportunities to accelerate. So I'm going to pause there. I did see some questions come through, so let me see. 233,000 trips for Class 8 trucks. Yes, for the Port of Stockton. Any other questions or thoughts or ideas or suggestions? Are there other things we should be looking at in terms of trucks related to emissions?
This is Margot. I think I like this slide. I like that we're talking about accelerating the regulations, working to address quality of life issues. I know it's always a challenge, and when we've discussed things with various projects in the city and county and whatever, people do what they have to do. You know, it's almost like the bare minimum. So I hope this is this comes to fruition, and I think that's kind of exciting. Thank you.
Great. Let me just address one of the questions that came up from Ed about the projections on how many megawatts will be needed. We are calculating that through the electric vehicle blueprint process that the port is going through. So there will be those projections. And I think the timing on that is probably towards the end of this year, maybe when a draft of that will be released.
Thank you.
Willie.
Great, thanks. Do we have some kind of report that shows the different initiatives that we've done over time and what incremental impact they've had in terms of emissions? I know you gave that chart about how much of a certain emission is, how much of a source is a portion of the emission, but I'm kind of curious over the past 5-10 years, what specific strategies have we done, and like what specifically translated to an X impact in emissions or a Y impact in emissions?
Jeff might have another answer. I mean, the 2018 emissions inventory, my understanding, was the first emissions inventory that the Port of Stockton has done. So that's your baseline. The great thing about having a good emissions inventory is that going forward, we can start plugging these strategies in and seeing the progress in subsequent inventories. And I believe the plan is to continue doing these inventories going forward on a regular basis. For the Clean Air Plan, we are also going to try to make some estimates of what we think the emission reductions could be associated with some of these strategies. They're somewhat qualitative, so we will do our best, but you're really going to see that progress once the subsequent emissions inventories start coming out.
Okay. Yeah, Renee, so the 2018 is the baseline, understood. So there hasn't been an inventory report since 2018, is that correct?
There's another one that's coming out. We're working on it now. And that will be released. It's a 2021, Jeff? Is it the 2021 inventory?
2020.
2020, okay.
Yeah.
Which should be released sometime this year, right, Jeff?
Yes, it's, I'm trying to remember, I want to say mid to late September will be completed.
Okay.
Got it. Yeah, the reason, and just to put that into context, you know, all of these ideas that are currently on the screen are great ideas, but it's hard to measure, you know, oh, this bullet point number 1 leads to an emission reduction of 10%, whereas versus bullet point 3 is 5%. Just being able to quantify even a range of potential impacts would help us kind of prioritize and understand which one is the biggest bang for our buck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. There was a question about solar panels. That is also a strategy that the electric vehicle blueprint is going to look at. So that's definitely being looked at. And did Mary Elizabeth, did you have another question, or was that it? And if not, I'll go to Jonathan's question.
That was it for now. Thank you.
And then Jonathan asks, Jeff has said that 2018 was their busiest year. I'm guessing that's the threshold for peak emissions.
Yes, 2018 at the time was our busiest year, and that's one of the reasons why we selected that year. Since then, 2021 has exceeded that, but not by a lot. So 2018 gives us a really good idea that we can balance off of 2020, because that was prior to when we put a lot of the zero emission cargo handling equipment and some of the other measures in place. So that's what we're trying to figure out, is if we're making incremental progress. So 2020 will tell us that. And then as soon as we're done with 2020, we'll probably start looking at 2021.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one brief comment. With the move toward renewable fuels, especially in Central California, some of those renewable fuels can cut greenhouse gases by up to 80%. They are getting used heavily in this area. And I'm wondering how that will affect or could affect your inventory from 2018, because they didn't exist in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a large percentage of the fuel being distributed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can look at how renewable fuels are handled in the inventories. They definitely help to reduce greenhouse gases. They don't do a lot for nitrogen oxides or particulate matter, which is also the pollutants of concern. And I do think that, and Jeff, maybe you know, I'm not for Stockton's specific inventory. I know that there are inventories where Starcrest has made some estimations around the greenhouse gas reductions for renewable fuels. And that's definitely a trend that's going to continue and probably increase over the next few years.
Yeah, so that's something we can take. We should probably have a sidebar with Randy next week, maybe or Randall, sorry, to talk about if he's taken that into consideration.
And Mary Elizabeth had a question about what percent is renewable fuels, and I would have no idea.
You mean for as far as usage at the port, Mary?
Well, yeah, but I'm sure, you know, the way that the truck traffic is portrayed, you know, people can get fuel anywhere. Right. So I'm just wondering, you know, like about that.
That's something we can look into and see if we can figure out, you know, try to get at least for the area, kind of what percentage of sales are in the renewable side. And we can revert back to you.
I do know in terms of the renewable market, and folks from CARB or the Air District might have better information, but because there are so many companies that are now looking at renewable fuels, it's increasingly a scarce resource. It's not like you go to your typical diesel fill-up station and get renewable fuel. So it is something that companies need to plan for and make sure that they secure a provider.
Well, there's a lot of activity in the renewable side at the port right now. I definitely know that. And Ed, you had your hand up. You could be a good resource for this.
I just wanted to let you know that from biomass fuel basis, the larger truck stops have been almost solely on renewable diesel and B20. And so, Renee, just to bring you up to speed on that, plus when you take renewable and bio and blend it and run it through a new technology diesel engine, the emissions are like 90% less than they would be for other trucks that come through. So there's several advantages. And then finally, I read an article this week, which I thought was very interesting. And CARB and another company worked together to develop a diesel engine that now meets the 2027 requirements from the governor's executive order, and it's being run by and tested by Walmart, which is fascinating because up until this point, the 0.02 was not achievable by diesel, but they're testing a truck right now. Walmart is in conjunction with CARB, and I don't know what that means, but that's what the article indicated. Some interesting things.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's been a huge amount of research and development trying to get a diesel engine that meets those low NOx standards. So that's great.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to have to keep going. We're running a little bit behind. So thank you, Renee, so much for that. We look forward to hearing again next month. I know Denmar's up next. Really quick, I've got a little bit, not a surprise, but we recently have been talking to the regional board, as well as one of our stormwater consultants who is working on the harmful algal bloom project or situation as well. And so we recently agreed to partner with them, provide them some access to the port, provide some funding to help support some additional studies to help reduce those harmful algal blooms. And so Ellen Pierce is here from Robertson Bryant, one of our consultants, to just give a really brief, Priest, an update on kind of what we're looking to do this summer. Thanks, Ellen.
Thanks. Is it okay if I prepared a few slides, if that's all right to share? Oh, it looks like I can't share. I emailed them. Oh, now I can. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, thanks for having me join here. I just put this together really quickly because I found out about your meeting yesterday, but I'm just going to give a quick overview, like Jeff said, of the project that we're going to work on this summer that addresses cyanobacteria harmful algal blooms or CHABs in the Stockton waterfront and along the Deepwater Ship Channel. And just real quickly, my background is working on cyanobacteria, and I've participated in a number of projects across the Delta and worked closely with the Central Valley Water Board in implementing these different research projects. And I'm mentioning that because we'll be partnering with the Central Valley Water Board on this project this summer. So I think most of you know that these algal blooms have kind of a persistent and seasonal problem along the Stockton in the Deepwater Ship Channel. You see the green scum, or the channel may look green if you're looking out in the water, especially in the summertime. The July through September period seems to be the worst, but they can actually pop up as early as May or June, depending on what the water temperature is. These cyanobacteria are a nuisance because they can lower dissolved oxygen in the water column and affect biota, and then also create toxins that can adversely affect the aquatic biota and also human health. And so there's a lot of concern about them throughout the Delta, but also in the Stockton waterfront, which is, and along the ship, has been identified as an area where we're seeing them every single year. So they were first identified in the Delta in 1999, and I'm aware of them being at the Stockton waterfront since at least 2012. Since they were first detected, they've become a lot more severe. The bloom season has expanded. So we just used to see them when the water temperatures were the highest, so about 3 months out of the year. And now you can see them, like I was saying, as early as May and into November. The blooms are larger and also seeing quite a bit of higher toxin concentration. And so because of all this, people are starting to pay a lot more attention to the algal blooms. And there's been a lot of chatter at the state level about the Stockton waterfront and the Deepwater Ship Channel as it's becoming so well known for the problem. So there are a number of knowledge gaps related to the algal blooms along the Stockton waterfront. We don't know much about the spatial and temporal variability of the algal blooms. We don't know if toxins persist the entire growing season, or if we're just seeing toxins of concern during certain time periods. We're not sure if there are areas that are more likely to be toxin hotspots, and it's important to identify these because they could be better candidates for future mitigation. And then we also need to determine the seasonal fluctuations, so we can identify when there is actual concern. Maybe it's not the whole 7 months that people need to be concerned, but it's a more specific time period. And so some increased monitoring would help answer these questions. So brief project background. I mentioned the Central Valley Water Board is a major driver behind this project moving forward, along with the port and the city. They are working to expand their partner monitoring efforts with community and scientists and advocates in Stockton. And they have implemented a couple of different projects with these partners for 2022. And the project I'm participating in is going to complement these efforts. And also I should say the project that we're presenting was designed around the other ongoing efforts so as to not duplicate data, but instead complement the data that they're collecting. So known other ongoing projects addressing algal blooms in the Stockton area. Restore the Delta and local community partners are using rapid test strips to test for the toxin microcystin at approximately 7 locations throughout the Stockton area. It's important to note that currently the guidance is to test in the areas with the highest scum. So to measure where the highest toxin concentrations could potentially be. And so that's I would assume what they're doing. From my understanding, that's what they'll be targeting. And then the University of North Carolina received some funding to measure airborne toxins throughout the Delta, and they're going to have a station located at the Stockton waterfront to see if those same microcystins are making it into the air and potentially presenting a risk to humans from breathing in the toxins through the aerosolization route. So like I mentioned, this project was developed with the Central Valley Water Board. The project was designed to complement the projects I just mentioned, and then also to utilize the resources that the Central Valley Water Board had available this summer. So the Central Valley Water Board is going to fund all of the analytical costs for our project. They are going to conduct 7 of the 11 sampling events. So we'll be out on the water 7 times between May and November. And that will be once a month in May and June, and then twice a month, July, August, September, and then once in October and November. We'll be collecting a variety of water samples and then also sediment samples. And then the port and city have agreed to split the cost to fund all of the data analysis and interpretation. And also I'll be participating in the group between the Central Valley Board and the Restore the Delta and then University of North Carolina, just to ensure that our work continues to complement one another. And then they've also agreed to provide a boat and a staff member who I'll be joining for up to 4 of those sampling events. So the project goals are to better characterize the seasonal fluctuations in cyanotoxins along the Stockton waterfront. And so we'll do that by, I'll show you in the next slide, the map where we have 5 established stations that we'll be going to on each sampling date and collecting water samples at the top and bottom of the water column, which we'll analyze for toxins and then also nutrients. We'll make data publicly available and compare the results from our work, which will be measured in the laboratory by liquid chromatography, LCMS, to those measured by NGOs that are using those test strips. And then finally, we're going to determine how legacy nutrient concentrations relate to the presence of cyanobacteria and associated cyanotoxin. That work will be primarily focused on phosphorus concentrations in the sediment. And once again, that information would be used hopefully down the line to inform mitigation efforts. And then this is my final slide. This is showing the 5 sites that we'll be sampling. So we'll sample these sites during each of the sampling events. And then in early summer and our last sampling event in November, we'll actually take 15 sediment cores along that transect, which we'll use to look at legacy phosphorus concentrations. So that was a very brief overview of a somewhat complex project, but I just wanted to squeeze it in to the time slot here, but I'm open to answering any questions if people want clarification on any piece of the project.
Thanks, Ellen. Yeah, I think everybody who works and lives near this area can appreciate the issues. And so we're happy to try to be a part of a solution and hopefully complement everything that the NGOs are doing. Does anybody have any questions? If not, oh, Mary Elizabeth.
Yeah, just a quick one. So I hadn't heard this about phosphorus. So is phosphorus that you're suspecting is the limiting nutrient that is sustaining these long-term historic blooms?
That often is. Nitrogen certainly also plays a role in it. But nitrogen moves out of the system. It's harder to measure kind of the legacy nitrogen solution, whereas once phosphorus is in the water column and the sediments, it's just cycling back and forth. And so there really hasn't been much, if any, research addressing that. And so we're going to focus on that for this part of the study. It's not to discount nitrogen. We will be measuring nitrogen in all of our water samples.
Great, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. That was awesome to hear about. Are you going to be doing any sort of, will you be doing any airborne sampling? I know there's a couple of machines that can pull that out of the air.
Yeah, that was the North Carolina study that I mentioned.
Yeah.
A Delta Science Program funded grant that they're going to be doing that. And so I'll be coordinating with them. I will not be doing any of the aerosolized part of the study, but it'll be really interesting to see how it relates to what we find in the water.
Yeah, cool. I knew about that work. I hadn't heard about the city and port partnerships. I'm glad to have the additional stuff going on. Who in the city acknowledged this problem? I'm just curious, like, do you know who the division is, or is it just the manager's office?
We're working with Dee Dee. She's who we've gave our proposal to. So it's through them, and then the port, Jeff at the port.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks to you both. And just for some slight correction, that the Restore the Delta project isn't an NGO project. It's the State Water Resources Control Board that contracts with them. And they did bring in some private foundation funding to help carry the University of North Carolina folks. I'm not sure how the org chart works between the Central Valley Water Board and all those, but nice to finally get all these agencies working together. And for those of you that survived the AB 617 process, a lot of these conversations came out of that. You know, we had a very creative HABS subcommittee that came out of AB 617, where everybody goes like, where do we go with this? And so where we went with it was a conversation with CARB's Enforcement Division, who said it drifts how many miles? Okay, maybe we need to take this into consideration as an air resources concern. And CARB was able to broker some conversations between State Water Resources Control Board and Cal EPA to get some cross-agency partnership around this problem. So glad to have the port and the city actively supporting. Hadn't heard it, but not surprised. You know, a lot of things going on. Grateful to hear about it. Thank you.
Yeah, this all just got, oh, go on.
No, it just came about actually in the last 24 hours, Matt. So, but we're excited to be partner. We partnered actually with Robertson Bryant last year on a grant proposal that I guess did not get picked up. So we've kind of been thinking about this for a while. We see it right on our front porch. So
yeah,
and you know, where we load up for our port boat tours downtown at the waterfront building, it gets so nasty down there. You know, it's
ground zero, and it's something
really,
we all got to work on. But I think,
yeah.
you know, I like our chances, fun developing together for this moving forward into the future. And shoot, there was something else I was going to share, but yeah, I'll share it with you later when it comes back to me, Jeff.
All right, sounds great. Mariah?
Hi, yeah. So actually, this is really exciting. And so while we are working with the State Water Resources Control Board, we are specifically working with Central Valley Regional Board staff on our testing. And while we are using rapid tests, we are also sending things off to labs at UC Santa Cruz. So we definitely want to, you know, further those discussions a little more and maybe talk a little bit more about collaboration and how we can share data and all of that cool stuff. I am not our science coordinator. That would be Spencer. He's not here right now, but I would love to maybe get a copy of this presentation and then your contact information, Ellen, so that we can kind of broker that kind of relationship. I think that especially as we go forward, we've already started testing and we're going to be doing a pretty rigorous testing protocol throughout the summer and into early fall. So it would be awesome to see, you know, how and where we can collaborate. And this is super, super important. And I'm so excited that the port and the city are both working on this because we've really pushed for it the past few years. And now we're very lucky to get some foundation funding to fund a lot of this project. And yeah, and working with the scientists from the Central Valley Water Board. So I would love to chat offline about that, but I did just want to let everybody else know. We're going to be having our HABS map that we've worked on with, oh gosh, it's part of the UNC process and also Duke University. It's Delta Water Mass Water I never get that right, and I'm not going to butcher it now, but we're going to have on our new website that's being built, an actual live map about where the HABs are in the Delta and what the level is and stuff. So we'd love to talk more about that. And yeah, Matt is correct. Spencer was with him.
Great.
I told him, yeah, you just tried
Yeah.
out about everything. He's like, dude, Matt, the cops got me. Like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And so they explained to him that he can't go out there. And then I talked to one of your officers, Jeff, and Victoria, about talking to you when you got back, about making sure that our monitoring isn't a surprise to people. I gave bad advice to a bright young man who had never been stopped by the police before.
No, reach out anytime, Matt. You know,
Yeah.
you've got my number. So
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
And
so no worries.
And Mariah, just real quickly, we'd be happy to chat offline, but I'm coordinating through Janice Cook at the Water Board, and she's proposal that the Port and City agreed to fund and thought it fit nicely in there. So
Sure,
I
yeah.
look forward to talking more about it though, because I would like to hear what you all have to and just continue to
Perfect.
collaborate.
And
Awesome.
as we're sitting here, some other folks are reaching out saying, hey, we got to collaborate. There's a couple other sources for data that we could bring to the table too. So
Perfect.
Ellen, remind me
Excited
of
about
that. All right. Yes, there you go, Matt. And he says, now I remember that it was the Nautilus folks. So yes, the Nautilus is doing sampling as well. So we want to
Yes.
include their data in here.
Yes,
as well.
awesome. Thank you so much. I look forward to further conversation.
All right. Sorry, we're getting a little bit late on time. Neil Maunu, is that it?
You got it.
All
You're
right.
spot on. You
So
win.
he's relatively new to the Denmark team. We've been kind of getting some of the newer folks up to speed and working with them and looking forward to the Denmark project, as I think most of you are familiar with. So Denmark wanted to come and provide an update, kind of the status. It's been a little bit. So Neil, please get us up to speed. Thank you.
Thanks for the intro, Jeff. Yeah, and let me know if you can't hear me or if you can't see me. I'm in Atlanta, and it's dark. It's already dark. So, and also let me know, like, if my hair gets out of place. Just give me a signal or something. But really, thanks. It's great to be here, and I just thought I'd take this opportunity as well to introduce myself. Like Jeff mentioned, I'm fairly new to the Denmark team. Been here about 5 or 6, almost 6 weeks now. So again, some of you've already interacted with me, but I will be involved in the project going forward. So those of you that haven't, you will going forward. So a little about me. I'm the Senior VP of Operations at Denmark. I've been in terminal operations on the West Coast in bulk materials and managing and leading terminal operations for about 15 years. Most of my experience was up in the Columbia River, the other river north here, and some of that was in soda ash terminals. We had a soda ash terminal that we managed there. So I've been doing that for a while. Prior to that, I was an active duty Army officer, doing some supply chain and logistics as well on that side of thing. We presented, the Denmark team presented a few months ago. So really, I'm kind of looking at this as an update, as a chance for everybody to ask questions. I will still go through these slides just because I think they're a great base to speak off of and get everybody back up to speed. I also use this opportunity to defer to Jeff or Kirk if I'm missing anything as we step through these. So I'm open to having any questions and any dialogue here as we go through. So just as a brief recap, we'll jump over to the slides here. Denmark US is a joint venture owned by the Jenner Group and the EMISC Group. And we are operating today now and have been for several years as Denmark in Turkey, doing soda ash and some other things. And actually in California, in Long Beach, we're exporting containerized soda ash in Long Beach right now. The Jenner Group, as you can see here, is a very large conglomerate. In Turkey, they own operations in Wyoming and have been exporting soda ash since they purchased that mine. I'm going to get this I think it was 2015. The big project that Ginner's got here is, and why we're here and what we're talking about, is increasing their capacity and their production by upwards of 6 million tons around 2025. And that project, that big project we call the Pacific Atlantic Greenfield Plant, which I learned today in Atlanta here at Ginner, at some point that may be combined to just be called one project, which is easier. It's fewer words. It just means the same thing. The other side of the slide there, right, is the EMISC group. And EMISC is great. They've been doing logistics and supply chain for literally generations. And the gentlemen who are running that organization now, who've spent a lot of time out in Stockton, their father and grandfather were trading cotton and commodities worldwide for a long time. So they've got a great amount of experience globally with terminals, with shipping. And I've learned, just even in the short time here and before I joined, an amazing partnership with the Ginner Group that's very much relationship based. It's a great organization. Next slide, please. And so this is kind of just a roll up of Denmark, US, and what our aim is here, what our focus is. One of the main reasons why I was brought on board to work with Bill and work with the board and work with the team is to develop this terminal here, develop our capacity, and grow our terminal operations and our footprint through the Port of Stockton. So you can see all these fancy buzzwords here, but these are all very good and very positive. The picture in the center, I love it. It's my favorite. It's going to happen. It makes Jeff smile every time he sees it. Do you see him? He's just smiling. So we can touch on some of these later, but we'll go to the next slide if that's all right. Okay, so this is a little more detail on, and again, I apologize if some of you guys have already been through this. I will try and be brief on the project here at the port. So again, it's Ginner, and it looks like Cinner, but it's pronounced Ginner Soda Ash, the facility in Wyoming. What makes Green River, Wyoming, and that area super special worldwide is its natural soda ash, and it's naturally occurring. There are very few places in the world where you can find this. It's soda ash, but it's really sodium carbonate is the chemical form. It's used mainly to make glass. So it goes worldwide to glass plants. They also use it for car batteries, for solar panels, for detergent, water treatment, water softeners, and a lot of food additives as well. So I love it because some companies are making synthetic soda ash. It's very carbon intensive. It costs more. It's not as environmentally friendly as natural soda ash. Every ton of soda ash that will move off the West Coast will be natural soda ash. Specifically here, so you can see actually there's a photo there of Green River, Wyoming, and the direct pick a line, the direct line that goes to the Port of Stockton there. I already mentioned 5 million tons a year capacity, and we've got our term on there too, 20 years with the 3-year options. When these guys invest and build in these greenfield or brand new sort of from scratch mines, which will be adjacent to the production facilities that Ginner already has, they do these for 50 years. The existing mine that Ginner bought, that production facility, I think was brought online, and if somebody knows, I think it was late 60s or early 1970s, and is still producing. So that kind of leads into that last bullet point on this slide, which is jobs and job creation. This is a very stable, amazingly stable commodity. Talking to all the people in the industry, and I've been involved in for many years, is economies can go up and down, but soda ash is always there, and it's a very steady, stable commodity. So I actually I want to sort of switch and take a break from this slide, and I'm going to put Raul on the spot and see, being as we're talking about jobs, we're working with Raul and those guys at Building and Trades. If Raul had any comments or anything to jump in with right here. I'm sorry to put him on the spot.
No worries. Thank you for that, for putting me on the spot here, Neil. But no, I'm always happy to talk about good partnerships and good endeavors for our community, right? as I stated earlier, I'm with the San Joaquin Building Trades, representing over 10,000 construction workers here in the valley, and just kudos to Denmark and reaching out and having the foresight to look at this project holistically and just have a positive impact all the way around, not just once the project is done and what value it brings, but thinking outside the box and realizing that the impact could start at the beginning of building of a project. And they've been real adamant in working with us, and we're grateful for that and support this job for that reason, right? These are going to be good middle income paying jobs that are going to affect a lot of families here in San Joaquin County. That's going to help them be here locally, stay home locally, and not having to travel 4 or 5 hours for a certain job. So it's definitely a positive impact. And also just speaking on, the type of workforce that's going to be utilized, right? All these construction crafts going to be involved in building these, right? They're trained professionals that are trained in the latest technologies, which to me is always important to mention that, construction is dirty and you have a lot of impact as far as on earth and what you're moving stuff around, but there's ways of having minimal impact, right? And our workers are trained in that aspect to have a cleaner, safer job in that retrospect. But no, we're delighted to partner with Center and delightful about all these opportunities that are going to be applauded to all of the individuals, that men and women alike, that we represent in this area. So thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Raul. No, it's exciting. I mean, it's a lot. It's a big project. There are not many big bulk terminal projects. There's a lot that gets talked about on the West Coast. I've been a part of it, but to be actually this far into it and continuing to move forward with just amazing partners across the board, it's awesome. So we appreciate it. Next slide, please. I think it might be my last one. It should be a pretty map. There you go. Okay, so you can go back one thank you. So I made a couple of quick, I know this isn't so quick, but the next part will be quick updates. Not the maps, just to look at while I talk a little bit here. As I mentioned, I'm here in Atlanta right now today, and I got the best, latest and greatest update. Everything is on track. Everything is moving forward on the production side in Wyoming, and everybody's super excited about moving forward here at the port, which is great. It's great to hear. Permits and meeting permit requirements, we're very much on track. We had some great productive meetings. Our team spent the week last week in the Bay Area, out at the facility, working with the Port of Stockton team and all the permit consultants. So everybody was good to meet in person for that. First time for a few of those for me. Again, overall, the project is very much on time. We did have some setbacks for COVID, like a lot of folks. We made some changes to our engineering team, which is just a good step in the right direction. Sort of imagine moving away from relying on consultants to do a lot of the work to bringing on our full-time people. That's one reason why I'm here. We're not doing consultants. We're here to stay. We're here to design, engineer, and then operate as we move into full-time. So we are on track to start breaking ground in next April, a year from now. Let's see, any other updates here? I mentioned our engineering team that was out. They're called Promer Engineering. They're amazing. They're doing some final, what we call value engineering and verifying our design basis. And then they're going to start detailed construction here, hopefully at the end of June. And that's about a 6-month or so process. So all those words being said, we're very much on schedule. We're confirming lead times for equipment, which is a big piece of this, right? As we're purchasing some big pieces of equipment and bringing those in and installing those, we're in the process of verifying that and hope to have a pretty refined schedule for our construction process coming out later in June. So as soon as we get that, we'll be sharing that with the port and with the team. So I think I'll leave it there, and I'll flip it, Jeff or Kirk or anybody if I missed anything. Or if anybody wants me to expound on anything, let me know.
No, I would just say, Neil, that it's been an honor working with you guys. I think that between the work that David Ritchie did with the going out and making sure that the community was aware of, being really transparent and really setting up a model of how we like to move our projects forward in the future. So it's been an absolute honor to work with you guys.
No, appreciate it.
Jonathan has a
Yeah,
question?
no, I wanted to just to say the way that David reached out to each organization, was very proactive. That's sort of the standard I want warehouses. I think developers should do, instead of the whole typical city council, city will try their best to reach out to people, but it's not really. David did. And so that was important, and it allowed us to continue work together, bringing people together and providing their thoughts, and hopefully developing a community benefits agreement. And, one question I had was, in addition to the construction side of making, if there's open to doing local hire procurement, I think making sure during operation side, hiring, we have quality Stockton residents here. We're trying to lower carbon emissions. We're trying to lower emissions. They don't have to commute as far, so we can hit a bunch of areas there. So I'm wondering if that's something you guys are open to, local hire procurement.
No, definitely. And I've spoken with Bill, and we've talked about it with our team on as we get our new engineering team on board, as we look at everything from initial construction to fully operating, how can we involve people that are local? How can we involve people that are here? I mean, look at, somebody mentioned it earlier here, just how much is going on at the port versus where it was, even a few years ago. And it's exciting. And I think people are drawn to that. And we're all about using and retaining qualified individuals that are close and nearby. Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to up our game across the board, Jonathan. One of the things I think I've been talking about for a little while, the only thing that slowed down implementation is some turnover in our higher level and the properties department, is that jobs board, where we want to incentivize our tenants and provide them rent offsets if they hire within the South Stockton community. So that is something that will be hitting the streets, hopefully as soon as we can get our new property manager up to speed. And Matt, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to double down that I think this is one of those rare win-win projects where everybody can be excited and cut the ribbon on this thing. We're thrilled that our brothers and sisters in the building trades are looking at some quality jobs that are the kinds of things we want them to do. I wish more of our problems could be found in an ancient volcano in Wyoming. Pulling up something that doesn't hurt us. I think there's an additional benefit to all this, which is it's a big footprint, and this reduces some of the emissions projections that we used to see in the West Complex development proposal. And so I'm wondering if anybody's crunched the numbers on, there's a whole lot less trucks coming into Stockton because of this footprint. And I don't know if Renee or anybody's looked at that old West Complex development and said, there's now not going to be 83,000 trucks coming to town because of this project.
Yes.
That's the kind of thing I'd love to make a ton of hay out of.
Okay. Yes. I know Katie Chamberlain's on from Anchor QEA, and that's what we were focused on early on. And so Katie, I don't know if you have that off the top of your head. If not, we could get back to Matt and the whole group and kind of say, yeah, this project essentially replaced, 20,000-30,000 trucks. So do you know?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
I don't know the number. It's a pretty big number. But I can follow up with you and get that information. Because we did look at that as we were looking at doing secret clearance for the Denmark project. So
well, just some context on that. I mean, we need to be able to point to things like this because we just had some major projects get told no, or at least no in this way. Our region may not have a say over what kind of developments we have going forward, considering our non-air attainment and this pattern of warehouse development. This is a good example of a similar construction project that can drive the economy, benefit communities, and not violate federal law. So it'd be really great to educate local planning commissions and local leadership about different ways to develop.
Yeah, and just to go back to one of Jonathan's points about you know, how Denmark, like I said, Denmark is the new model for how we want folks to operate. We push people in that direction. That doesn't mean they're always gonna do that, and be as engaging, but we definitely are pushing them to go that way. And then Juan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Denmark again. I'm also with the San Joaquin Building Trade Council, Vice President. You know, this is huge for both parties, I guess, working together. We can't wait to get started working with them on this project.
Thanks, Juan.
Great, yeah, thanks. And Raul, you had your hand back up.
Yeah, you know, I'm just piggybacking off of Jonathan and Matt's comments, right? Ideally, Denmark, you know, a lot of the pushback we get when we're trying to do our outreach on with any of these organizations that are here today's meeting is, you know, the narrative would always be that it won't pencil out, right? Well, this is living proof that it does pencil out. You could do something responsibly and have an impact in the community with its residents and still be able to turn a profit, right? Because this is what's happening right here. So I just wanted to kind of jump on that bandwagon, and this is the model that you can't no longer say it can't be done, because we're doing it right now, thanks to Denmark and their willingness to work with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys very much. We're about up on time. The only thing I was going to talk a little bit about some of our grant opportunities coming up, just so this group's aware. We are going after Department of Transportation Port Infrastructure and Development Program grant opportunity for some rail upgrades. So I'll be generating support letters and reaching out and see if we can get some support locally here for that project. And then also we're moving ahead. We're with our zero emission vehicle blueprint project. And we've also submitted on the Energize, the California Energy Commission grant opportunity. So we haven't heard back yet if we're going to get additional chargers. We're very hopeful that we will, but just wanted to give you a heads up, and I'll be reaching out on potential support letters. So if there's nothing else.
Hey, Jeff, it's Katie. I was just going to say, I found that number. It's
okay.
just over 1 million annual trucks
That's
per
huge.
year.
And a nice
that
round
were
number.
less than what was in the EIR from the West Complex Development Plan. So it's big.
Yeah, great. Appreciate that. So there you go, Matt. That's a nice round, substantial number that we can all point to. So that was definitely a win. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate your attendance. We look forward to seeing you again next month. And reach out if you want to come out for a tour. That's always open. You can ping me. There's a couple of folks from AB 617, so we're putting together another couple tours right now. So feel free to reach out, and look forward to seeing everybody next month. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.